Now, the holidays are some of the most stressful times to deal with your spouse or your family members. The question here is, how can you keep the focus on your marriage and not let your family issues start causing problems between the two of you? And this morning, I'm joined by Dan Seaborn, a relationship expert with Winning at Home. You may have heard him on Wood Radio, pretty well known around town here. The question, though, for Dan this morning is, what kind of advice do you have for people as these holidays come in here that you're going to be spending more time with family members you normally wouldn't see that much, and how do you basically keep the focus on your marriage, on your relationship with your spouse or your partner, and make that still strong?
Well, if I could figure out how to exactly answer that and put it in a jar, we'll sell it for Christmas. I do think that one of the things you have to accept is everybody's family has challenges. Everybody's families has issues that they're dealing with. And I know for me, I believe one of the first things we have to do is accept what it is. I think too many people want to make their family time perfect. You know, Thanksgiving, we don't have any problems, don't want to make any issues come up. Well, the reality is you don't live together all the time. And so when everybody comes back together, you need to expect that there are going to be some issues and flaws that are going to happen. It's just life. And so one of the things I really encourage people to do is just accept it as what it is. You're going to be dealing with some issues. Make sure you're comfortable with that. Know there's some changes, some stress. And I think just when we know we're going into a stressful time, we prepare ourselves more mentally for that. And I believe if you can do that, it will really help the whole family during the holiday season.
So just try to take a chill pill, in other words, huh?
Yeah, you really need to.
That's pretty hard to do sometimes,
It's very hard to do, but like we're doing right here, up front you agree on it. You know, usually the holidays sneak up on you. I'm saying let's sneak up on the holidays and be prepared for it by kind of turning that around and saying, okay, I know there's going to be some stress. I'm going to keep myself calm and make that decision up front.
Okay, so just an early attitude going in.
Early attitude.
Let's talk about that one relative that can be really difficult to deal with. Everybody has one, right? I mean, everybody knows who we're talking about right now, whether it's an uncle or an aunt or a mom or a dad or whatever. What do you do, and how do you keep that person in check?
Well, already when you think about that person or their face kind of is coming up in front of you, what we tend to do is kind of go, okay, I'm going to ignore them, I'm going to push them to the side. Just the opposite. Make sure you get them involved. You probably know things they like to talk about, things they're involved in. Make that relationship happen by talking up front about that with them. Just go over to them and make them feel included. They already feel excluded. They know they're the black sheep. So you try to turn that around and say, okay, come on into the family, be a part of the family, don't exclude yourself, and put them into conversations. And if they cause problems then, just deal with it as you have to. But the reality is, I think many times we make them feel even more excluded and more sequestered by the way we act. So make them feel included by bringing them into part of the family.
Some great advice. I appreciate that, Dan. We appreciate you coming in here, and we're not done with you yet.
Okay.
All right, we got some more coming up here. Extended family can be one thing during the holidays, but dealing with money can put another big stress on your relationship. So coming up at 6:50, Dan's going to be back in here in studio with us to talk about you and your spouse and how you keep from ruining your relationship with arguments over cash. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Thanksgiving and Black Friday have always been the unofficial start to the holiday season. Between gifts and holiday parties, it can be easy to see your expenses go way up. So how can you keep your money issues under control and not let them take over your relationship? Relationship expert Dan Seaborn with Winning at Home joins us again in studio to talk about this important issue. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
What advice do you have for couples when it comes to spending, especially around the holidays? Because this can put a big stress.
It can. I mean, even in my family, I know that on Thanksgiving, we're looking at the newspaper preparing for Black Friday. So the reality is it's going to happen, and we are going to spend money. I think one of the first things I try to do in my family, and I would encourage you to do the same, is make sure you stop and think about the past. Have you ever really spent a lot of money and bought somebody something and that lasted for the year? Everybody's like, wow, best Christmas ever. Not really. What makes a family peaceful and happy is when the relationships are good, when you're getting along. I mean, when you and your husband get along, Emily, that makes Thanksgiving.
Absolutely.
And I would say the same thing's true here. Don't focus so much on the finances, focus on the relationships. And then, you know, Dave Ramsey is my hero in this area. Just make sure you spend money that you have. Don't go out and blow your credit cards up, because you're going to pay for that in a month or 2 or 3, and you're really going to harm your family. So the first thing to do is understand where you are, know your family's finances, know where you're at as a family, and don't overspend. That's a real obvious thing, but make sure you don't compare yourself to other people. Don't be thinking, well, we got to buy what they bought. That's all misinformation. You do what your family does to stay peaceful. We work really hard at that. I got friends who are stinking wealthy, and I don't try to compete with them because I can't. So I try to buy things that fit within my family budget.
So when you try to keep up with the Joneses, really that feeling that you have, that unpeacefulness that you have of not being secure with your money situation is really not worth the trade-off.
Not at all.
So what do families need to do to make sure that they don't miss out on the holiday season?
Well, I think it's important that we remember what the holidays are about. Like I say, I really believe these days a lot of people think of Black Friday before they do Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Absolutely, they do.
And so, you know, Thanksgiving was established by President Lincoln. I mean, he said during the middle of the Civil War, we're going to take a moment here in the middle of all this fighting and really be thankful for all the blessings of our country. And I think every family needs to do that. Let's take a moment during Thanksgiving. Let's take a moment during Christmas to remember what these holidays represent. Thanksgiving, that we have a lot to be thankful for. Christmas, that we have a lot to celebrate through the birth of Christ. And I think many people miss those things.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important, whether you agree with some of that stuff or not, we need to know the foundations of why those dates were established.
Do you recommend that when it comes to marriages that spouses have separate bank accounts, or do you recommend that they go together, or is that a personal thing?
It really is a personal thing.
Okay.
I have friends both ways. My wife and I actually share our account. We're very open with each other. We have spending limits for each other. But I think that each couple needs to be at peace with that particular thing. I don't think either way is wrong, as long as both of you stay within your budget, have control. I mean, if one gets out of whack and begins to spend money they don't have, then you're going to put both in stress.
All goes back to communication, doesn't it?
Exactly. I mean, I've got a house payment. If Jane's blowing all the money on one thing or I'm blowing it on another, we can't make our house payment. So you just got to be unified. And you can do it either way, but make sure you talk together and have good communication on what you are doing.
Dan Seaborn, thank you for joining us this morning.